Hello, hello, hello. Thank you very much. There you go, mate. He's been fretting about who holds the clicker for about a day.
Clicker anxiety.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the talk. You'll see some of our White Claw team handing out a few cans. Double park, it will make the next 15 minutes a lot easier to go through. I'm Anthony, Head of Client Services at the Kite Factory, and to my left, the man rocking the tie-dye is Dino, Marketing Director over at White Claw. And today we're going to talk to you guys about how we launched this brand that was absolutely massive in the US, but had absolutely no heritage here in the UK. No one knew who we were or what we were doing, and in a category that barely existed. This was a pretty good partnership between the two of us. Usually it'd just be the marketing director up here, but they brought the agency along today just to show that solidarity. And it was pretty intense. I think for the first year, we were joined at the hip every day rocking this campaign, but it was fantastic. So I'm going to hand over to Dino to start to talk you through the marketing strategy of how we went from being unknown to unstoppable.
Cool, so if I take you back 20 years, 2003, Scouser with a GCSE in maths, fantastic. There was the norm in the US that consumers would drink these massive fucking buckets of really sugary soft drinks. And you can see here the Extreme Gulp 7-Eleven. That was the norm, and that was the perception of a US consumer. But then, in 2010, came along this guy, this brand, LaCroix. It was a flavored sparkling water, also known as soft seltzer. Really disruptive packaging, but more importantly, it had flavor and variations of flavor that made consumers think, well, I can still have flavor in a soft drink, but I don't have the calories or sugar to that versus a normal soft drink. People wanted more. In the space of 10 years, the soft seltzer category doubled in size from 400 to 800 litres. And then in 2016 was the perfect wave. Mark Anthony Brands, who launched Mike's Hard Lemonade, thought, well, everyone's drinking soft seltzer for lunch and after work and with meals. Why don't we just make it boozy and make it a hard seltzer? And that's when the hard seltzer category was born. White Claw, I think hopefully everyone's heard of White Claw. It was a social phenomenon, right? It was a brand that reached millions of people organically. In 2019 was known as the White Claw Summer. We actually ran out of demand. And across social media, across states in the US, consumers were trying to find the next fix of White Claw. But White Claw was famous for what people say about us. It's a marketer's dream to have organic conversations through social media of consumers making memes and tweets about you. And we had over 1 billion meme impressions, but actually we never released anything. I think everyone might have heard of Ain't No Laws When You're Drinking Claws. It's a viral video. So we create this momentum. But what we actually tried to do is just make a really distinctive brand that stood up on shelf and actually really combated this macro trend of a better for you by having the right benefits in order to drive consumers away from highly sugary, high-calorie drinks and actually go for something that's meet people's lifestyles. So in December 2020, this was actually when I started with White Claw. We had a Tesco meeting a couple of weeks into my role, and this is what we presented to Tesco. Up there for category, 3.5 billion the hard seltzer category's worth in 4 years. Since 2017, household penetration from 3% to 22%. In the past year, it's doubled in volume. White Claw is bigger than Budweiser and Corona. It's got 53% share of the hard seltzer category. And in 4 years, White Claw is #2 beer brand by household penetration. That's insane, right, in 4 years for a category to turn up and deliver this amount of scale. Even the press, so the trade magazines and Guardian Consumer are saying, is this going to be the same? Can we replicate it in the UK? Consumers going to connect to hard seltzer in the same way? So, when you sell the dream, again, when it launched in 2020, every single supermarket had us stocked everywhere. But we quickly found out no one knew the category, no one knew the brand, no one knew what the liquid is. We had a big job to do in the marketing world to bring that up to speed. There's a lot of differences between how White Claw in the US and in the UK has been seeded. Because this was a social phenomenon, a lot of the spring break, though, culture across Twitter and Instagram consumers who adopted us were very different to what consumers in the UK, how they connect with brands. So we really had to look at the culture of the White Claw in the UK. Next, Hard Seltzer. The term Hard Seltzer, if you know US trends, it's simple. When I think of Hard Seltzer, I think of dodgy stomach after a big night out, so you get Alka-Seltzer. You think hard, you're straw pea during Smirnoff fights at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're going hard. Or sparkling water is when you're at Annabelle's spending 60 quid on a posh meal and you just want some fizzy water to wash it down with. So it was very different, the perception of Hard Seltzer. Also, this is a photo when my child was 2 in Tenerife when we actually couldn't have any fun. And this brand was born in the height of COVID. So we're on all these shelves. We couldn't explore, we couldn't play with any consumers. We just stood there, so it was at-home consumption. The biggest piece of work that we needed to understand is how brave do we want to be? Do we want to fit into a category norm, or do we want to really focus on brands? But for us, we really want to build a lifestyle brand of the future. And all the activity we've done for the past few years is to build White Claw as being a household name brand in the UK. We sat around for a couple of months. Got a guy, James, down here, who's one of the first guys with us, that we needed to create a vision, and a vision that's unified across the UK. And it was to be synonymous to Hard Seltzer. Consumers don't really know Hard Seltzer. Let's go White Claw first. The bar call is White Claw. All of the success from the US came from beer and cider drinkers. And we needed to build a lifestyle drink for a consumer that wants to match lifestyle choices to their own drinking and eating habits. Now, Target. This is a new category in a brand new market and a new brand. We needed to seed, we needed to build the foundation, so we need to really focus the targeting on these early adopters. And this is actually, for the past 3 years, we've just really focused on a single consumer segment. So who are those consumers? It's not a Gen Y, not a Gen X, it's not a textbook. What we looked at is, there's certain consumers that are party obsessed, but they live with compromise, right? They get up in the morning, they're hungover, they don't want to do it anymore. Then you get the fitness obsessed who are into the calorie counting, but they live life by restriction. We need to have fun, we need to socialize. So we kind of target the lifestyle in the middle of, we call them healthy hedonists. People that don't live with, that don't compromise, but also don't restrict themselves. One big insight I took from the US, firstly, is frequent trial is key. You need to put a can into hand a few times in order to understand the benefits. And once you try the product a few times, once you know the benefits, it creates word of mouth. And word of mouth for us is how the US began, and it's how we've started to snowball in the UK. There were 3 really simple brand building behaviors, really basic. Putting cans into hand, full can, not these little flimsy shots, in the best way, the best occasions, daytime, in parks and festivals, but also fundamentally make some noise. And we needed the right partner to close that gap of physical to mental availability, which is where I bring you on to Anthony.
Thanks, yeah, so look, it was a pretty complex time, and for us, we had to really distill what the media challenge was. And there was loads of facets to this, but for us it came down to 2 things. It's how do we launch this social brand when no one's being social, and how do we leverage what the new social norms are? But secondly, and I think this is one that we spoke about a lot internally, is White Claw have got quite a distinct brand code. So from a media perspective, how do we bring that to life rather than go more traditional, more sort of something that didn't really make sense with the brand? So there's a media creativity bit in there as well that we had to make sure that we kept alive in our campaign. So I'm going to take you back to COVID, and there was some weird shit happening. I mean, the amount of banana bread consumed was insane. But people are on this heightened sense of discovery, new discovery. And for us, it's like, well, where does White Claw fit in all this? So there's a big insight that we found was with less expenditure going on big ticket items, luxury, and things like that, there was a big peak in self-treating. Everyone remembers the beer subscriptions and all of that, right? So what does that look like for White Claw? And for us, it wasn't about going down that traditional route of, let's get revenue in for the short term. It was about incubating this brand and behaving like a lifestyle brand in those moments of discovery. Our healthy hedonists, as we've termed them, were all over things like music discovery, film, TV content, well-being, recipes. So what did White Claw look in all of this? We wanted to make sure that the discovery element was organic, it wasn't contrived, but it was also giving people a flavor, of who White Claw were, without going down the buy us now and forget us later route. So then, as the world started to open up, we had to make a decision. Was it, do we go broad? Do we go high frequency, high reach? Or do we incubate this brand and start small? So our instinct were, well, actually, look, fundamentally, we're going after these hipsters, these cool people. Where are they? I'm going to say they're in London, but we needed to sort of verify that. So the data insight suggested that actually within London, it was in the south and the east. So for us, the decision was quite clear. There's a huge cross-section of our audience that was in these areas. And for us, it's like, this is where we start. This is where we start to incubate the brand, and this is how we scale down the line. Now, at the Kite Factory, bit of a plug, we really value creativity, so much so that it's part of our DNA. So we talk about the heart, the art, and the science of planning, and you can find out a lot more of that on our website. So I won't go into too much detail here. But for us, it was a creative insight that really sparked the foundations of our campaign. Before I get into that, these were our pillars for media execution. How do we own the parks? And that's what the creative strategy was. How do we drive impact in the right areas? How do we amplify online? And how do we close the loop between discovery and point of purchase? So, people are out in the real world. This is an opportunity for us to take the brand out and go big. Where we executed was still at the heart of social places. So we were all over London, the south of London and the east, but in these big, high-impact formats that were non-traditional to the category. So that was one thing. But also, at the heart of all this, we wanted to be where people were socializing, where they were seeing their friends, where they were consuming beverages. So we were really specific with where we were going. But then to take that a step further, it was about how do we win the hearts and minds of our consumers. Healthy-headedness being innovators were probably the first to move on going out with their friends and spending some quality time together. So how better to win the hearts of people when they're actually seeing their friends for the first time, when they're meeting with their families and loved ones that they hadn't seen in so long. So for us, from a media perspective, we dominated the arterial routes and the transport links into all the major London parks. But then we also closed the loop with trial. So we had brand ambassadors that were giving out cans across the park. But then we also had this partnership with Gorillas where people could actually order White Claw and get it sent into the park as well. And it was phenomenal. We absolutely took over that moment. And I think for us, Dino, I'd say that moment was probably where we found this is the essence of the brand. This is where it lives. And the reason why we said owning the parks to win the gardens is because we knew people were going to go back home at some point. The world was going to open up even further. And we want to get into people's backyards, into their barbecues, into their picnics. So this was a conduit for us to do that. So this was the starting point. Wow, 2 minutes. 2 minutes to go. And then we took that further. So I spoke earlier how we had discovery moments in music. For us, All Points East was a perfect activation moment. Again, similar to the park strategy, we took over all the routes into the festival. We had a load of social seeding up front, but also we used this opportunity to then retarget our fans who went to the festival and then build lookalikes to scale, but still incubating. We're not going too broad, but still scale using lookalikes. So from a media perspective, that's how we fueled that moment. Then obviously a huge part of that was the distribution that White Claw had as well. So we're tying up understanding with trial the whole way through. And for us, fundamentally, this is the blueprint that we executed across all of our many tactics. It was understanding what the consumer journey was from the beginning to the end. We worked really closely with Dino and the creative team to make sure that the assets were actually fit for purpose along the way, rather than have a cookie-cutter approach and serve a couple of brand assets from people learning about the brand to start with to consuming it and buying it. It was what story are we telling at what point, and at what point do we want people to find out more, and how do we push them further through the funnel? So it's really meticulous craft planning, and that's something that really stood us in good stead across the campaign. So what next? Over to you. You've probably got a minute left, I reckon. I reckon you've got a minute left.
Minute?
Yeah.
What now? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll speed through. What now? So things what we found out. Actually, we proved it right. We actually did the survey. 80% of consumers knew us. Only 20% actually knew what Hard Seltzer was. So we've removed all Hard Seltzer from all our communications. Next one. 56% of consumers are swapping for beer and cider. So we've extended the segment. We've seen great success. We oversold beer at Snowbombing, which is a target audience of ours. We're now 68% share of Hard Seltzer, up 30% on volumes. year on year, which is phenomenal. But there's three parts of this story. The first one is bravery. We had to reposition the brand from the US. We had to ask my bosses for a lot of investment for a very targeted audience and a very complex integrated marketing plan. We have focused, 3 years we focused on the same plan, being extremely targeted on who we connect with and when we go broad. And then thirdly is ambition. We went for a brand-first approach, and we really want to make sure we win the hearts of minds. And you can see by the category, there's a lot of brands that have jumped off and disappeared. So we want to be here today, not gone tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.